Have you ever felt like you're living someone else's life? You go through the motions, wake up, work, socialize, smile, but deep down, there's a quiet voice whispering, something's missing. You don't know what. You can't name it, but it's there, always. A hollow ache, a subtle unrest, a strange distance between who you are and who you're supposed to be. Most people spend their lives feeling this way, not because they're broken, but because there's a part of themselves they've never met, a part that has been silenced, buried, or rejected, a part that still lives in the shadows, shaping your choices, your relationships, your fears, without you even knowing it. Psychologist Carl Jung called it the shadow self, the unconscious part of you made up of everything you've been told not to be. The thoughts you weren't allowed to think, the emotions you were taught to suppress, the dreams you were told were unrealistic. And here's the terrifying truth. Until you turn around and face that part of yourself, you will always feel lost. This video is not just about psychology. It's about you and the journey you must take inward if you ever want to feel truly whole. So if you're ready to confront the part of yourself you've been avoiding, the part that holds the key to your clarity, healing, and freedom, keep watching, because this isn't just another video. This could be the moment your life quietly begins to change. There's a part of you that holds everything you've disowned. Your fears, your anger, your grief, your unmet needs, your unspoken truths. Carl Jung called this the shadow, not because it's evil or wrong, but because it's hidden, pushed outside of your conscious awareness. It's made up of everything your childhood taught you wasn't acceptable to feel or express. Were you told to calm down when you were angry? To toughen up when you were sad? To be good even when something felt wrong? Peace. By peace you began to exile parts of yourself, not out of weakness but out of survival. You learned to adapt, to please, to protect yourself. But here's the price. You can't fully be yourself while secretly running from yourself. That shadow you avoid doesn't disappear. It leaks out in other ways. In your relationships, where you lash out or shut down without understanding why. In your choices, repeating the same mistakes, the same regrets. In your mind, where anxiety, confusion, or numbness quietly take root. The part of you that you don't understand is the very part that controls your life the most. The parts of you that were pushed into the shadow didn't disappear. They just went underground. And from that hidden place, they still influence you, more than you realize. You wonder why you keep sabotaging relationships. Why you always feel the need to prove yourself. Why you're overwhelmed by anxiety before speaking your truth. Why you feel like an imposter, even when you're successful. This isn't random. It's not just how you are. It's your shadow, the buried part of you, acting out from behind the curtain. You see, the psyche always seeks balance. Whatever is suppressed eventually resurfaces, but not always in obvious ways. It shows up in your reactions. That sudden rage you can't explain, that shame you feel after being vulnerable, that craving to be liked, even at the cost of your truth. These aren't flaws. They're symptoms, signals. The shadow doesn't want to ruin your life. It wants to be seen, but until you turn around and face it, it will keep pulling the strings. Quietly, subconsciously, relentlessly. That's why you feel lost. Not because you lack direction, but because you've lost connection with yourself. Real transformation begins the moment you stop running from yourself. You don't need to fix the shadow. You don't need to destroy it. You just need to recognize it. Because when you shine light on what's hidden, you gain back your power. The power to respond instead of react. To choose instead of repeat. To live freely instead of unconsciously. Carl Jung once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." Think about that for a second. What you call bad luck, emotional baggage, or just how I am, could actually be the invisible grip of your unacknowledged self. The moment you become aware of it, when you recognize the part of you that's angry, scared, hurt, or numb, you stop being its prisoner. This isn't easy work. It requires brutal honesty. It asks you to revisit memories you've buried, to feel emotions you were taught to silence, to admit truths you've been afraid to speak, even to yourself. But in that discomfort, something sacred happens. You begin to reclaim the pieces of you that were never truly gone. You meet yourself, fully, perhaps for the first time. And that's when the healing begins. Not when your life looks perfect. Not when the pain disappears. But when you finally stop running and start listening. Facing the shadow isn't about diving headfirst into your pain. It's about meeting it with honesty and compassion. Start small. Begin with a question. What am I afraid to feel? Let that question sit. Let it echo. The answers won't always come in words. Sometimes they come as a memory, a physical sensation, or an emotion you've long ignored. Next, observe your triggers. What makes you disproportionately angry, hurt, jealous, or ashamed? These emotional spikes are not problems. They are portals. They point to unresolved experiences, unmet needs, or beliefs formed in childhood that still operate in silence. Here's the truth most people avoid. The shadow holds your pain, but also your potential, the creativity you suppress, the strength you downplay, the boundaries you're afraid to set. All of it lives in the parts of you you've exiled. When you stop seeing your darkness as the enemy, it becomes your teacher. But go slow. Write, reflect, journal. Ask, what part of me feels unseen? What did I have to hide as a child to be loved or accepted? What emotions do I still label as wrong or too much? The more honestly you answer, the more clearly you begin to see the architecture of your inner world, and the less power your unconscious wounds hold over your present. You're not broken. You've just been divided. And healing begins when you reunite with the parts of you you were told to forget. What if everything you've been running from was actually trying to set you free? Your anger, the part you suppress to keep the peace, contains the voice that says, I matter. Your sadness, the part you numb to stay productive, holds the message, I need care. Your jealousy, fear, insecurity, they all point toward what you value, what you long for, and what you've been taught to bury. The shadow isn't your enemy. It's the forgotten blueprint of who you were before the world told you who to be. Carl Jung believed that true wholeness comes not by becoming perfect, but by integrating what was lost. He called this the process of individuation, becoming fully yourself by reclaiming all your parts, especially the ones you've rejected. Here's the shift. You stop seeing your pain as a flaw, and you start seeing it as a guide. When you listen to the shadow, not obey it, but listen, it transforms. It's no longer a monster in the basement. It becomes a messenger, a mirror, a map back to you. And suddenly, things begin to change. You stop reacting from old wounds. You stop repeating emotional patterns. You stop searching for validation outside of yourself. Because you've finally looked within. Because you've finally come home. Healing doesn't mean becoming someone new. It means remembering who you were before you had to forget parts of yourself to survive. Integration is not a one-time event. It's a slow, sacred process. It happens in the quiet moments, when you choose to sit with discomfort rather than avoid it, when you allow yourself to cry without shame, when you set a boundary not to push someone away, but to protect the part of you that was never protected. That's when your shadow begins to soften, not because it's defeated, but because it's finally being seen, and that's all it ever wanted, to be acknowledged, to be felt, to be included in your story, not as a villain, but as a guide. Because here's the truth that can change your life. The part of you that you've been trying to hide is the part that holds your freedom. You don't need to have all the answers. You just need to turn inward and listen. Ask yourself, what have I pushed into the dark? What would it mean to meet that part of me with compassion? That's where it begins. Not with perfection, not with clarity, but with the courage to look, because until you understand this part of yourself, you will stay lost. But once you do, you'll realize you were never broken. You were only unfinished.